What is up, guys? Randomonium here with your Week 5 Fantasy LCS recap. In this video, I'm going to break down all of the games that happened in NA and EU LCS in Week 5. I'm going to tell you what teams won, and more importantly, why they won. So if there's any games from Week 5 that you have not seen yet and you don't want the results spoiled, just please stop watching this video right now because I will be discussing every single game in detail. Watch the games you want to watch and then just come back and watch this video later. But without further ado, let's get into the games. So the first game up was Unicorns of Love versus H2K. I thought H2K was going to win this game, and they wound up winning. It really was a back and forth game, which is what I expected. But what it really came down to is what objectives each team was able to get off of the kills that they got. Because both teams were able to get kills. It was just a question of what team was able to get more objectives. So I decided to put up just an example from both games. So H2K at 29 minutes, they were able to get 2 kills. And Unicorns of Love was able to get 4 kills and a Baron at 35 minutes. So you think that Unicorns of Love would be able to get more towers, more objectives off of that team fight than H2K. But Unicorns of Love was only able to get 2 inner turrets, while H2K was able to get 1 inner turret, 2 inhibitor turrets, and 1 inhibitor off of just 2 kills earlier in the game than Unicorns of Love. So that really was the difference. H2K is just much better at taking objectives off of kills. This game up is Fnatic versus Elements. Fnatic just absolutely dominated the game. Elements messed up their lane swap quite a bit, and even though there wasn't that much action in the first 10 minutes, Elements was down already 2,000 gold at 10 minutes. Probably the most interesting point about this game was that Fnatic went for Banner of Command and Zz'Rot Portal on Nautilus in top lane, and this was really fantastic because the only person on Elements that had teleport was Malphite. So what they did was that they put Nautilus in bot lane in the later half of the game with the Banner of Command and the Zz'Rot Portal, and they just started sieging bot lane. And the only person who could stay from Elements in bot lane to defend that was Malphite, because if anybody else went down to bot lane, then Fnatic would threaten the Baron. And Malphite's just unable to clear out Banner of Command minions and Portal minions since he primarily does AP damage. So really kind of a fantastic audible that Fnatic called. It worked out really well for them, and it really makes me excited to see what's going to happen in future weeks with these new items with the Banner of Command and Zz'Rot Portal. All right, next game up is Origen versus Splyce. Um, this was a really interesting game because Splyce got what they wanted, right? They were able to counterpick the Ahri with LeBlanc. Um, they, got some pretty good picks, but they just did not look good. I mean, Ahri was able to pick up the first blood on the LeBlanc, which it should never happen. Um, and even though Splyce kind of went even in the laning phase, Origen was just constantly tracking Splyce's wards. They constantly had Splyce's jungle warded up. They were always a step ahead. Superior team fighting. And Splyce really couldn't do anything. They had all this mobility on their team with the Corki, the LeBlanc, the Rek'Sai, the Quinn, and they were able to do nothing with it. So definitely a good game from Origen, but definitely one that I would have expected them to win. So we're still seeing that Origen is able to beat these lower ranked teams, but they're struggling with a lot of the higher ranked teams. All right, G2 versus Vitality. In this game, I thought G2 was going to win, um, and I was definitely kind of surprised that Vitality would beat them. G2 went for an engaged composition, while Vitality went for an AoE damage composition, and G2 actually won the early game pretty well. But what it really came down to was kind of these late game team fights. Vitality just had so much damage, and G2 like tried to engage through it, and they just got completely destroyed. They ended up trying to fight in choke points, and that really was kind of the death of them. Even though they had a gold advantage, Vitality just had so much AOE damage that they completely blew up G2. And then Vitality just did a fantastic job with the split push with Fiora, and really kind of forced the issue with G2, and G2 just couldn't keep up. So Vitality's looking fantastic. They definitely are improving very rapidly. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with them next week. All right, Rockcat versus Giants. Um, Rockcat dominated this game. They had at one point a 6K gold lead in the early game. There's no reason why um, Rockcat shouldn't have won this game. Um, but really, both teams were sloppy, and Rockcat ended up losing the game because they went for a rush Baron. This really was kind of a sloppy game. Giants didn't do anything with their Kindred pick. Rockcat didn't do anything with their Quinn pick. Both teams did not look very good. And Giants flipped the coin and wound up winning because Rockcat rushed Baron, and Giants was able to get a favorable engage and win the game. So not very impressed by either team. But yeah, I'm glad the Giants was able to pick up their first win. All right, Origin versus Vitality. This game was very unexpected. I know that Origin struggled with top-ranked teams, but I expected them to put up a bigger fight than this. Um, and the first thing that I want to talk about is this Rek'Sai pick. Um, I really don't like Origin picking up Rek'Sai in this comp. I feel like a lot of teams just kind of default to Rek'Sai because Rek'Sai is just kind of this all-around jungler, but it's just a horrible decision. Unless you have a specific reason to pick Rek'Sai, you shouldn't pick Rek'Sai. You shouldn't just automatically default to them. That's just laziness, in my opinion. And Rek'Sai didn't really do anything for this team comp. They needed more damage. They needed more impact. They needed more wave clear. They needed something like a Kindred or a Graves. Even like a Lee Sin would have been much better than Rek'Sai for Origin. Um, but yeah, Nidalee ended up dominating Rek'Sai because Rek'Sai kind of struggles a little bit in the early game. Origin wound up messing up the lane swap, and Vitality they dominated the jungle, they dominated top lane, they used their TP advantage to dominate bot lane, and they just completely destroyed Origin. So definitely not a very good showing from Origin, and yet another sign that Vitality is one of the top ranked teams in EU. All right, Unicorns of Love versus Fnatic. Um, I don't know what Fnatic was doing with this pick ban phase. I mean, if you look at every single part of the pick ban phase, Unicorns of Love got the better picks. They get the Alistar the first pick, and then they don't give up anything, and then they wind up getting Corki and Poppy in the second round, and then they don't give up anything, and then they wind up getting Elise and Victor in the third round. They got everything they wanted. I don't know what exactly Fnatic was doing, but they didn't deny anything from Unicorns of Love. And then when we actually got into the game, Unicorns of Love had a faster lane swap. They took both towers faster than Fnatic. And even though Fnatic was able to kind of stay in the game because of some outplays, Unicorns of Love just had better use of teleports, and they wound up getting 3 Barons this game. That's almost unheard of. Unicorns of Love got 3 Barons before they wound up closing out the game. And a lot of the reason why they were able to get 3 Barons is because Fnatic only had 1 blue trinket, and they kept face checking brushes. There really was no reason for them to only have 1 blue trinket. They didn't have control of their jungle. They needed to have more blue trinkets to be able to not have to face check. And that really just kind of turned a bad situation into a worse situation because they kept on getting picked off over and over again and giving Unicorns of Love more gold and more objectives. Okay, H2K versus G2. This was a really interesting game. We saw that H2K, they banned out the Kalista Graves Lucian, and then they first picked the Corki to kind of force Emperor down onto a lower ranked AD carry, and he winds up picking up Ezreal, which he did actually really well with. Um, but the real reason why G2 kind of won this game is because if you look at H2K's comp, it's nearly all AD. Quinn, Lee Sin, Corki, Caitlyn, Poppy. All of them either do exclusively AD damage or, about half AD damage in the form of Corki. So what does G2 do? They pick up the Braum in the first round, and then their last pick is Malphite. Malphite's the perfect counter to an all AD comp, and you actually got into this even though H2K kind of won the early game, G2 towards the end of the game, Malphite and Braum were just unkillable. There's nothing that H2K could do against the Malphite and the Braum because they only had one source of damage, which allowed Malphite and Braum to really itemize against them. Um, I will say that G2, even though they got the win, they kind of rushed some Barons. Um, but yeah, G2 looks fantastic. I definitely did not expect them to beat H2K, but H2K just kind of messed up a bit with their pick phase and didn't have enough of variety of damage sources, and G2 really punished them for that. All right, Elements versus Roccat. Um, for Roccat, like I don't understand this pick phase. Like, what is the win condition for this team? You've got Corki Braum, you've got Lulu Kindred, and then you get Trundle. Um, you don't have a lot of damage. I mean, your only damage sources are really kind of Kindred and Corki. I mean, I guess you've got some good protection because you got the Kindred ulti and you've got the Lulu ult. But then you've got no real form of engage because Trundle and Braum aren't very good at engaging. You've got a little bit of disengage, a little bit of control, but not that much. You don't really have any way to start a fight, and you don't have that much of a way to prevent a fight from starting against you. So I really don't understand. I don't understand this team comp. They don't have very good wave clear. They don't have very good sieging potential. So yeah, I don't understand what the win condition is. This is kind of a jack of all trades comp that's not good at anything. Um, Element on the other side, you can see they've got a very well-defined team comp. They've got Lucian and Victor for wave clear and damage. They've got Janna for disengage. They've got Poppy and Elise for engage. It makes a lot of sense, their team comp. And Element was just faster in the lane swap. They had very good outplays in the mid game, and they had better team fighting in the late game. So they easily beat Roccat. But Roccat did not do themselves any favors in the pick ban phase. All right, Splice versus Giants. Yeah, yet another game where I just don't understand the pick phase from Giants. I mean, Giants pretty much gave Splice favorable lanes in every single matchup. I mean, Lucian is going to be able to bully the Ezreal. Corki's going to be able to bully the Ahri. Fiora's going to be able to bully the Maokai. There's no good lanes for Giants. I mean, Nidalee was able to get a lot of pressure early, and that kind of relieved some of the pressure on Giants, but it wasn't enough. Um, yeah, it really was kind of just a sloppy game from both teams. Giants really just didn't have any setup in any of their team fights, and Splice wound up getting one good team fight with the Corki package, really good use of the Corki package. They wound up getting a 5-0 ace, and then they just won the game. So kind of a boring, sloppy game, unfortunately. But yeah, Giants is same problems. It's the same stuff week to week that I keep bringing up over and over again. So hopefully, they actually learn from their mistakes and actually improve in the next week. All right, Echo Fox versus Renegades. Echo Fox went for the Siege Tower Dive comp, and I really was not happy with the comp that Renegades drafted in response. All right, you know that Echo Fox is going for a Siege Tower Dive comp. They've got the Alistar, they've got the Corki, they've got the Elise in the first 2 rounds. So you know they've got Siege and they've got Tower Dive. And what do you guys pick up? You got the Lulu, Kalista, Poppy. All right, that's fine. But Rek'Sai Quinn, why? Why would you go Rek'Sai Quinn when you know that they're going for a sieging tower diving comp? It really just doesn't make any sense. I mean, there are so many picks available that would have been so much better. For top lane, you could have gone Lissandra or Gangplank. Rek'Sai, you could have gone or for jungle, you could have gone for Graves or Kindred instead of the Rek'Sai. Just and you could have even had the Poppy go top lane, and then you could have chosen Janna for support, so that way you have disengage whenever Echo Fox tries to dive you. I mean, any one of those options would have been better than what Renegades chose. So, I don't really understand what they were trying to go for with the pick ban phase, and it really kind of set them behind. And then Quinn was just completely ineffective with the split pushing. Definitely were some shot calling errors on Renegade side, and even though the Echo Fox made some mistakes, they were just able to dominate team fights and just win the game. All right, Energy versus CLG. Wow, this was a really impressive game. by CLG. They went for this like kind of this pick split push comp, and NRG went for their engaging kind of team fight comp that they've done in the past. And CLG was just fantastic at split pushing. Fiora was winning the one-on-one versus Malphite, and then CLG was winning the remainder of the 4v4 against NRG. CLG did have one bad Baron call, and NRG was able to get the Baron steal and win the team fight. But CLG just had fantastic shot calling. They allowed Fiora to win the 1v1, and then they were able to stall the rest of NRG to allow Fiora to split push, pick up an inhib, and then while NRG was trying to frantically back, CLG won the 4v4 team fight, got an ace, and was able to close out the game. So definitely looked fantastic from CLG. They're definitely the best team in NA when it comes to split pushing and controlling that 1v1 matchup versus the 4v4 matchup. All right, Cloud9 versus Team Liquid. Cloud9 drafted kind of this team fight comp, and Team Liquid went for this kind of hyper mobile comp, which I can understand. You've got the Quinn, you've got the Rek'Sai, you've got the Twisted Fate, so you've got all this playmaking potential by using your mobility and rotating around the map, which Team Liquid is very good with. But they didn't control the side lanes at all. Like the whole point of having a hyper mobile comp is you control the side lanes and you can create pressure on multiple fronts. Team Liquid didn't do that. They didn't control their vision at all, which allowed Cloud9 to really kind of pick them off. And Cloud9 just did a much better job playing to their win conditions, playing to the team fight, and they didn't overextend. Yeah, definitely kind of unfortunate because if you look at Team Liquid's team comp, it just kind of screams 1-3-1. If you look at it, you got the Quinn and the Twisted Fate, so you put them in the side lanes, and then you've got Rek'Sai, Kalista, Alistar in the mid lane. But the problem is that Kalista, Alistar, Rek'Sai doesn't have enough wave clear to really deal with kind of a tower diving sieging comp. So yet again, I feel like the Rek'Sai pick was kind of misplaced, and it probably would have been better if they went for somebody who had more wave clear, like a Kindred or like a Graves. So they could have really done that 1-3-1 that I think the Team Liquid should have done. But yeah, the Rek'Sai was all right. They just didn't really make good use of it at all. So good job on Cloud9. They definitely look like they're one of the top teams, and they really kind of played to their win conditions, didn't overextend, didn't make mistakes that Team Liquid could exploit. All right, Team Impulse versus TSM. So TSM was faster in the lane swap, but Team Impulse got a huge early lead in kills. The problem is that Team Impulse is not able to get any objectives off those kills. So they had all these kills, they generated all these picks, but they weren't able to get any objectives, so they didn't get a very large gold lead. TSM was having all sorts of communication issues, but then around the 20-minute mark, it just kind of just clicked for TSM, and they just started absolutely dominating Impulse. It was just they just came out of nowhere, dominated Impulse. They all got on the same page. It really looked like two different teams. Like it looked like halfway through the game, they just swapped out players and new players came in, and that's really interesting. So now I'm really curious to see which TSM is going to show up in future weeks. Because if the second TSM, the TSM that showed up after the 20-minute mark, plays that way for the rest of the season, they could be one of the top teams. But if they start playing like they did in the first 20 minutes, then they're going to be struggling to get a playoff spot. All right, Immortals versus Dignitas. This is the game you should watch if you want to know how Rek'Sai jungle should be done, because they did a fantastic job with Rek'Sai in this game. It was so oppressive. Rek'Sai was just everywhere, constantly causing trouble. Just a fantastic job. Probably one of the best utilizations of Rek'Sai I've seen in a game. And then Immortals just did really oppressive in bot lane as well. And even though Dignitas was able to fire back, they were able to get kills, they were able to get objectives, they just could not keep up. Like, Dignitas would get a kill in top lane, and Immortals got 3 towers off of them. They got bot inner, and then mid outer, and mid inner off of 1 kill. So Immortals is just, they're willing to trade those kills because they know that they're going to come out ahead. Immortals just does a fantastic job at trading objectives, trading kills, and always coming out ahead in their games. So good job on Immortals. They're still undefeated, and I think they're going to remain undefeated for a while. All right, Echo Fox versus NRG. This was probably the surprise of the week. Very, very interesting. So if you look at the comp that NRG drafted, they've got Gangplank, Braum, Evelynn, Lucian through the first 2 rounds. So if you look at that, what top laner is like the perfect top laner to round out that comp? And the answer is a Malphite. A Malphite is like the perfect answer for NRG. So they get that engage, and they've got the Braum ultimate, Lucian ultimate, Gangplank ultimate, Evelynn ultimate, all on top of that. All on top of that Malphite ultimate. It would have been a fantastic team comp. Echo Fox did a fantastic job realizing this, and even though Malphite was not necessarily the best choice for their team comp, they picked the Malphite to deny it from NRG, and that was fantastic. KFO did a great job on Malphite, and he really made it look like that's what they wanted all along. He did a fantastic job engaging, but it was very clear that NRG wanted Malphite because they instantaneously after that they locked in the Maokai, who was kind of just like a worse form of engage than Malphite is. Malphite has a much stronger engage with his ultimate. So yeah, it was very clear that NRG wanted Malphite, and Echo Fox denied that. And then Echo Fox did a fantastic job with ward coverage, great team fighting, great use of the Malphite ultimate. And NRG just wasn't in sync, and they didn't use their ultimates to get maximum damage. Gangplank ultimates were off, Evelynn ultimates were off, Lucian Collings were off, and they just didn't look like they were on the same page at all. So Echo Fox looking very strong now that their entire team is back, and I'm really interested to see what they do next week because Echo Fox could really upset the balance in NA right now. All right, CLG versus TSM. I thought CLG was going to win this game. TSM came out firing on all cylinders. They looked like the TSM of old. It was very interesting, but I think that CLG really kind of shot themselves in the foot with the pick phase. They first picked this Ryze. They wanted the Ryze more than anything, but they gave up so much. They gave up the Kalista Alistar in exchange for that Ryze. And then that just kind of sets them behind. And they went for this weird kind of Ash Morgana lane, and then gave TSM Fiora Graves, which is also a fantastic, combination for top lane and jungle. And then they saved their counter pick for mid lane for last pick, and they counter pick Lissandra into Victor. And Bjergsen did a fantastic job on Lissandra, completely sold out Victor, which was definitely unexpected. And definitely TSM was just, they looked better. Like individually, each player looked better than CLG. And CLG really didn't kind of play to their strengths. CLG is known for their lane swaps, and they wound up going standard lanes against TSM, and they just kind of lost. TSM had better skirmishing, better shot calling. CLG just didn't look like they were on the same page, and this really didn't look like a CLG comp. So hopefully CLG kind of learns from these mistakes and kind of goes back to the drawing board and goes back to what they're actually good at, instead of trying to, come up with this weird new strategy against a team that is really strong and like TSM. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what CLG does next week in response to losing this game to TSM. All right, Immortals versus Cloud9. This was the game of the week. If you have not seen this game, you need to watch it. It was awesome. It was such an awesome game. Cloud9, I love their bands. They banned out Soraka and Janna, which Adrian has been fantastic on. Adrian is kind of like the unsung hero of Immortals. He's been doing a fantastic job at support, and I really like the fact that Cloud9 banned out that Soraka and Janna because he's been doing fantastic with Soraka and Janna. I really like both the comps. I really like that Jhin was picked up from Cloud9. I was really excited to see that. Um, and Cloud9 really just kind of went kill for kill against Immortals. It was really fun to watch. Every single time Immortals got a kill, Cloud9 would get a kill. But the way that Immortals were able to get advantage is that every single time Immortals got a kill, they got just a little bit more than Cloud9. They would get a little bit more tower damage, or they get a few more CS, or maybe they'd sneak a dragon, or they'd invade the jungle and get a couple of jungle camps. And you started to see the gold lead starting to grow and grow and grow. So first it was a couple hundred gold, then it was 500, then 1,000. And then by the time you got to, 10, 20 minutes of the game, they had a 2 or 3,000 gold lead, and that allowed Immortals to kind of get an advantage over those team fights that were so close in the early game. The other thing that you saw from Immortals is they adapted mid-game. They were adapting mid-game. When Cloud9 got in a good team fight in the early game and Jhin just went off on them, they adapted to that. Originally, they kind of tried to run away from the Jhin ultimate, and Jhin just lit them up. And then you saw later in the game, they adapted, and when Jhin used his ultimate, they ran forward. They even flashed into the Jhin to interrupt him, to make it so that he couldn't fire off his ultimate, and he had to back away. He had to respect that damage that Immortal had. So fantastic shot calling from Immortals, and also some equally great shot calling from Cloud9. They had some fantastic team fights. Definitely one of the most exciting games I've seen. It really has me excited for playoffs because I know these teams are probably going to meet again in playoffs. So yeah, great game. But yeah, Immortals got the victory, and they definitely earned that victory. It was definitely a fun game to watch. All right, Team Liquid versus Renegades. So Team Liquid kind of drafted kind of a not a normal comp for them, but they played it really well. They definitely were some really good outplays. Corki wound up outplaying the LeBlanc. Did a really good job hiding in the minion waves to avoid her E, and Team Liquid just looked better. The better rotations, better team fights. And if you look at the Renegades team comp, they just don't have that much reliable wave clear. So when you have a team comp like that, you're dependent upon getting ahead, right? If you don't have wave clear, if you can't stall out a siege, you have to get ahead. And Renegades really just kind of got destroyed in every single lane, and then they didn't have any wave clear, so that Team Liquid was just able to push down towers, get a huge tower advantage, and just pretty much completely win the game from there. So Team Liquid looked really strong in that game, and Renegades is still continuing to have problems. All right, Dignitas versus Team Impulse. This is the last game of the week, and this game was just really weird. Dignitas had some good rotations early. They had some good trading early, but they really kind of rushed. Like Impulse is a team that thrives in chaos. You never want to rush with Team Impulse, and I feel like Dignitas really was kind of rushing things. Impulse was able to anticipate the plays that Dignitas was going to do. They got some really good flanks off, and they were able to swing team fights in their favor, especially like the really extended team fights. Impulse was able to win by a landslide, and that allowed Impulse to get the victory. But it definitely was a game that I think that Dignitas could have won. They definitely had an advantage early, but Dignitas is still kind of struggling, and they didn't play to their win conditions. They played to Team Impulse's win conditions instead, so that's kind of unfortunate. All right, so as far as my conclusions are concerned, the big one is that teams are showing huge improvements week to week. Like literally, if you compare the NA and EU teams in week 1 to where they are now, they look completely different. And that really has me excited because it looks like every single team is really pushing each other to become better and better and better. I think that the playoffs are going to be decided upon who can improve the fastest. So when you're looking at these games, it's not necessarily who's got the best team right now that matters. It's the teams that are improving the fastest that are probably going to wind up at the top of both NA and EU. Continuing on from last week, same point. The difference between these top teams and the lower ranked teams is how many objectives you can get off of kills. All the teams in NA and EU can get kills. The difference between victory and defeat right now is how many towers, how many dragons, how many barons, how many rift heralds you can get off of a kill. So definitely look for that to determine whether or not a team is going to win. Is can they get objectives when they get a kill? I definitely see that engaged comps are gaining more and more strength, and I expect that assassins are going to become more popular as well, especially in 6.3 with a new assassin item, to kind of combat these kind of poking, sieging comps that we're seeing. So I'm definitely expecting to see more engage, more assassins, especially in 6.3. And then as we're seeing, games are trying to last a lot longer. Teams are figuring out how to avoid games from snowballing out of control early. And you're seeing these games get to the 30, 40, 50-minute mark. And what that means is that team fight comps are going to become more powerful because when you're that late into the game, a single team fight can win you the game because death timers are so long. And the other type of comp that's going to become much more powerful are scaling comps. So you're seeing a lot more champions that can scale well, like Anivia, Ryze. Even though he got nerfed, you probably won't see him again that much in 6.3. But champions that scale really well into the late game, they're going to become more popular in 6.3 and beyond. I bet we're going to see probably Kog'Maw in 6.3 a lot more of these hyper scaling mid laners and AD carries. So on to a new slide for this video. I'm going to give you my rankings, who I think are the top teams in NA and EU. This is not what their actual rankings are based on what their win-loss ranking is. This is my personal ranking. So I think that Immortals is best team in NA, followed by CLG, which I know a lot of people will argue with me on, but I still think that they are the cleanest team that I've seen in NA besides Immortals. Yes, they lost to TSM last week, but that was just one game, and I'm not going to discount them from one game. I think Cloud9 is the number 3 team in NA just because their shot calling is so fantastic. And then number 4, Team Liquid, and they also look they're really improving, but that's a shaky 4th spot. Because at the 5th and 6th spot, we've got TSM and NRG, who have looked fantastic at times, but they've also looked really bad at times. So I don't know what TSM and what NRG is going to show up in the later half of the season. I'm hoping that they're going to get on the same page and get in sync because that's going to make things really interesting. But TSM and NRG haven't shown the consistency that they need to in order to be a top team yet. At number 7, I have Echo Fox because they just got back their full lineup. They're looking fantastic. As long as Echo Fox can keep their full lineup, I think that they are going to rise in these rankings. And that's going to make things really interesting because there's only 6 spots available for playoffs. And you've got 7 really good teams in NA right now. So it's going to be really interesting to see which team does not make the cut for the playoffs. Rounding out NA, I've got Team Impulse, Team Dignitas, and Renegades. All teams that have the possibility of being good, but really have not gelled enough and are not on the same page. Their shot calling just isn't on the same level as a lot of these other teams. On the EU side of things, I still say H2K is the best team in Europe. I know that G2 beat them, but H2K just has looked so good week in, week out. G2 has also looked fantastic, but I think that if we had a best of 3 or a best of 5 series between H2K and G2, the H2K would wind up winning that series right now. But I do think that G2 deserves the number 2 spot, followed up by Vitality. Vitality, in my mind, is the fastest improving team in EU. And what that means is that they could possibly take that number 2 or that number 1 spot by the end of the split. Rounding out the playoff spots for EU, I've got Unicorns Love, Fnatic, and Origen. They all look much better than the rest of the teams in EU, but they don't look like they're at the same level as H2K, G2, or Vitality. And then in the number 7 spot, I have Elements. They're kind of the guard for the playoffs. You can see that Splice, Roccat, and Giants, they're never able to beat Elements, but Elements is never able to beat any of the teams above them. So it's kind of one of those things where if Splice, Roccat, and Giants ever want to challenge to try and get in the playoffs, they have to go through Elements first. And then rounding out the pack, you've got Splice, Roccat, and Giants. I don't feel like they're in the same league as the top-ranked teams right now. They just don't look as clean. They don't look as good. Maybe next season they'll do better. Next split they'll do better. But right now they're just not in the same league as the rest of the teams in EU. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the content on the channel, please subscribe. If you agree with anything I said in this video or you disagree with anything I said, please leave a comment. I love to have a conversation about things, get different feedback from people, and try and improve my own knowledge and understanding of the game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is Randomonium signing off.